Let's bring in political anchor to New York One, making his Morning Joe debut, Errol Louis, who was one of the moderators at last night's New York City mayoral debate to great acclaim. Also with us, president of the National Action Network and host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, Reverend Al Sharpton, and co-founder and CEO of All In Together, Lauren Leader, is with us. I'll let you take the first question to Errol.
Well, Errol, I thought it was a contentious debate. Tell me what you think were the highlights and who came out of it more victorious. Clearly, Ma'am Danny is way ahead in the polls and appears to be the one that it was there to beat. Did Andrew Cuomo's attacks and Sliwa's performance in any way you think changed the tone of the campaign and the trajectory of who might win?
I thought the clip that Mika played was really the most forceful denunciation, the strongest kind of centralized attack that didn't stray off into any particular issues, but just talked about the fact that Mr. Mamdani is relatively new to politics. This really is structurally a big difference between the candidates.
Really
Andrew Cuomo, if elected, would be the oldest mayor in the history of New York. Mamdani, if elected, would be the youngest mayor in over 100 years. So this is clearly just a very, very different. The pain is so great for so many New Yorkers that Mamdani's rise is partly explained as a primal scream from people, especially young people who cannot get a foothold, who cannot get ahead, who do not see the system working for them.
Sure.
And they're saying, you can take all of your experience and throw it out the back door. We have to try something new because what's happening right now is not working.
Yeah. Joe.
Errol, I thought it was interesting last night. We actually saw some energy from Andrew Cuomo, who his supporters condemned him strongly during the Democratic primary for just not even running a campaign. And he's been, I think, kind way to describe his campaign is say flat. Many people even reaching out to us suggesting that his appearance on our show last week was less than inspiring, but last night he seemed to have fire for the first time. And tell me, any insights as to why Andrew Cuomo has been so flat during this campaign and why it took until last night for him to start hammering away really on the front runner's probably greatest vulnerability, and that is the fact that he just doesn't have a record that would suggest he's ready to run New York City?
You know, what I think happens, Joe, is Andrew Cuomo is the veteran of 7 successful statewide campaigns, 3 for his father, Mario Cuomo, then he won as Attorney General, and then 3 times as governor. So he really knows how to run a statewide campaign. But New York City is very different. You have to get out in the parks. You've got to be at the subway stations. You've got to get up where people are praying or playing or going to the supermarket. And it's not the kind of campaigning that he is used to doing. So I think he was a little slow at figuring out how much of a contact sport it really is at the ground level. And by the time he adjusted to that, a lot of the campaign had gone by. And then also, and there's just no getting around it, the question of Israel and Jewish New Yorkers and how it's treated and talked about in New York has fundamentally changed. There are 750,000 Muslims in New York now. Their voices were not heard in the era that Andrew Cuomo's politics were forged. It used to be that you would pledge allegiance to Israel or whatever the Israeli government happened to be doing, and that was sufficient to win whatever election was in front of you. It's just not like that anymore. It's a debate. It's a dispute. Mamdani came in and was firm in holding to the Netanyahu government's unpopularity in a lot of New York precincts, including among a lot of Jewish voters. And so I think Andrew Cuomo was slow to adapt to that reality. A lot of people in New York are slow to adapt to that reality. And I think that's why this has been such a fraught political debate.
Yeah, Reverend Al, you are, other than being our friend and being on this show, you have been described as one of the most powerful forces by the New York Times and others in America in Democratic politics. That certainly holds true in New York politics. I'm curious, in that capacity, how did you see last night's debate, and how do you see the end run for this campaign, the end game for this campaign? What direction do you see it heading?
Well, I think that what we saw last night probably was the better performance by Andrew Cuomo. I don't think it was enough. I think that, Madani, what Errol Lewis just said, was able to deal with some issues and some things that he'd not been able to do. He's been the one making a lot of sense. I've not endorsed anyone, but I think he's made a lot of sense. I think that the problem Andrew Cuomo has is he came out fiery too late, and he's not been out on the streets and the subway stops and all, and he's not been able to handle the issues. But I think that the real thing that Zoran was able to hang around him was the whole situation of him being the choice of Donald Trump, which is widely unpopular among New York City voters. And I don't think Andrew Cuomo refuted that strongly enough. And if you're perceived to be the guy with Trump while we're seeing Canal Street invaded and other things, I don't think that helps you on Election Day.
Longtime conservative strategist Karl Rove has a new piece for the Wall Street Journal entitled How to Read the 2025 Election Tea Leaves. And Lauren, I'd love your take on this. He writes in part, quote, "In our highly polarized politics, small deviations from the norm in race results could reveal factors that prove decisive next year. New York is a good example. Socialist Zoran Mamdani is likely to win, but he is the Democratic nominee, and registered Democrats make up 65% of the city's rolls. What if Mr. Mamdani's vote count falls well short of that number? Look, across the Hudson River to New Jersey. Despite the party's 13-point registration advantage, Democratic gubernatorial hopeful Mikey Sherrill leads by only 4.1 points in the Real Clear Politics average of recent polls. November's elections won't be a crystal ball for the midterms, but advantages for the parties going into next year's elections. If they're smart, each side will be paying close attention to what's behind the headlines. That could make a real difference in what could be one of history's more consequential midterms. Stay tuned. Lauren, stand by. Joe, take it to Lauren.
Yeah, Lauren, you know, Karl Rove, you look at the polls, and Karl Rove has a good point here. New Jersey closer than it should be if you're a Democrat 1 year after Donald Trump got elected. Virginia closer than it should be if you go back to 2017, 1 year after Donald Trump was elected the first time. And Democrats, Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger, two candidates that I think most of us thought would run away with these contests, are both locked in very tight races. What does that suggest?
I mean, there's so much to unpack there. First of all, nobody knows elections better than Karl Rove. I mean, he's always got brilliant insights on these things. But look, I think there's a couple things. The New York City election is anomalous in a lot of ways. There are a lot of New Yorkers who are what we were calling in the general election double haters, people who are deeply despondent over, frankly, both of the front runners. Jews in New York who are apoplectic over the possibility that Mamdani could win. There was a viral video this weekend, the rabbi from Park Avenue Synagogue urging New York Jews not to vote for Mamdani. But on the other hand, you've got Cuomo, who, as we've all said, is incredibly flawed. The more he talked about his record last night, the worse he sounded. I was in the room. It was just, it was so uncomfortable because his record is so flawed. And of course, the big hit that Silwa got was reminding him that he didn't just leave his post, he resigned in scandal and in embarrassment. So this is a really complicated race. The summer election results were weird. Half of New York wasn't even in the city in the summer, so you had a very small number of people voting. Anyway, look, to New Jersey and Virginia, I think the polls, we've seen this over and over again, and we've talked about this so many times on this show over the years. Those polls are really, really tough to read early. We don't know how they're going to turn out, but Americans are deeply divided. I mean, even the New York gubernatorial race was closer than Kathy Hochul would have ever wanted. People are really torn about their party affiliations. They're not voting straight party ID anymore. The party brands are broken. They're really looking at individual candidates. That can be a big advantage for women like Sherrill and Spanberger. It was in Michigan and Wisconsin in the midterms. We'll see.
Joe.
I mean, yeah, bottom line is the Democratic Party continues to struggle in a time that they should be thriving. And by the way, you don't have to look at polls. Because polls are highly unreliable. Who knows? Maybe New Jersey and Virginia sweep strongly in the Democratic column. We don't know that, but you just look at party registration. Democrats have been losing party registration in New Jersey since Donald Trump got elected in 2024. So who's to say? Errol, Lauren brings up such a great point. Those summer elections in New York City, those summer primaries and off years are so weird, are so strange. There's so few voters coming out. I mean, you even look at Democratic primaries and off-year elections for Congress next year. A lot of times that's where you'll be shocked by AOC winning, and it'll say, oh, there's a big political earthquake. And I'm just talking about the first race here. I'm certainly not undermining her great political talents, but you look and see how few votes like she got and other candidates get in those sort of races. And sometimes New York gets this outsized influence by a handful of voters who decide they're going to go with, let's say, somebody like Mamdani in the Democratic primary. But again, like AOC, he's extraordinarily talented. He's a great political athlete in many ways that Andrew Cuomo's not. Could we... That's just me blabbing. You talk about whatever you want to talk about off of that one. But I am curious. So, are there people in your newsroom that are whispering, going, polls are so unreliable? Who knows? Maybe Cuomo can eke this one out. Or is this over?
I've tried to train my colleagues to recognize that polls are simply a snapshot. It's not predictive in any way, and we're not in the prediction business anyhow. What I will tell you, though, Joe, is that, there's real fire there. The Mamdani phenomenon is partly a youth movement, as the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez victory in 2018 was. Back when AOC first won, I think there were maybe a dozen or so Democratic socialists elected to office. That number is now over 250. Most of them came after she won. But there's a real youth movement here. She won when she's in her early 30s, mid 30s. The average age of a member of Congress now, I think, is 58, 59. There's a generational divide here. There's a generational force that's really powering a lot of what we're seeing in the politics of this city and other places. And I don't think that changes. I mean, yes, a very talented candidate can squeeze out an extra 5 or even 10 points more than anybody else. And then, by the way, I got to say, I mean, the June primary that we just had set a record. It was the biggest turnout since 1989. So by New York standards, it was a pretty extraordinary turnout, and that goes to some of the changing face of the electorate, not just the young people, but there's a big South Asian vote that really has coalesced and was built up by Mamdani. That was kind of his main strategy for victory. You can't win if it's the old traditional coalition. You bring new players to the game, and you get a different outcome. That's why he's the nominee.
Interesting point.
And you know what's so fascinating, too, Rev, is there's this constant battle between the progressive wing of the party and the moderate wing of the party. And you had the establishment saying, oh, Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill, they're going to win going away. And again, who knows, maybe they do win going away, but those races are much closer. You look where the energy's been in the Democratic Party over the past year. It's been with Mamdani, it's been with AOC, and it's been with Bernie. I mean, they're the ones, man, and as old Hank Williams song goes, they're the ones setting the woods on fire. When they go out and, like, they go to rallies across America, people come out, and you can tell that's where the energy is right now in the Democratic Party.
And what really is very concerning to me is why people don't get it. Because what you just outlined shows that it's not just generation. Bernie Sanders is 10 years older than me. I mean, so it's about who's addressing the concerns of people. Affordability and those issues that Mamdani has raised is hitting a chord that people live by. And what they don't like is politics as usual, where we're sitting around with pointing fingers at each other. You crossed against the red light 10 years ago or 30 years ago, you did this. What about my rent? What about the fact that I can't afford to live in the city? I think that's why he's resonated. I think that's why AOC resonated. It's not about who was born last. It's about who's dealing with those alive right now.
Political anchor at New York One, Errol Lewis, thank you so much. And coming up on